So you might be wondering why you're being asked to do an ethnographic research project in your writing class. You might be wondering, why do this instead of the standard research project that you're probably more familiar with? Well, first in this video, I want to get into what ethnography is and then offer an explanation of its merits. And for this video, I'm going to be referring to Seth Kahn's article, Putting Ethnographic Writing in Context, which is available in your copy of Readings on Writing. Ethnography is another genre of writing, like a narrative or a rhetorical analysis. It's writing about people engaged in a shared activity. And while most ethnographic writing you're familiar with is most likely about a specific culture, you're going to be writing about a specific community and the communication and writing practices shared within that community. And Kahn notes that the genre of ethnography is being used more and more in freshman composition classes. To me, a good example of the popularity of ethnography is actually reality television. Some shows serve as an example of ethnographic research on a specific culture, like Jersey Shore, or a specific dance company in Pittsburgh, like Dance Moms. Ethnography can also be seen represented in mockumentary-style sitcoms on television, capturing the dynamics within a paper company, like in The Office, or a government service, like in Parks and Recreation, and so forth. The documentary style of these shows is important because a crucial component of ethnographic writing is conducting primary research, collecting data through interviews and observing that community as it engages in a shared activity. While you probably won't be able to film the community, you can take field notes of what you observe when you're on site, meaning at the place where the shared activity occurs. And you can also conduct personal interviews with various members of that community. So now we know what ethnography is, but why are we doing it? Well, the simple answer is that ethnography allows you to engage in a number of practices and skills you want to keep developing, such as generating, collecting, analyzing, and synthesizing materials and texts. You'll also learn about ethical research practices. Since you're writing about real people, you need to be conscious and conscientious about how you portray them and the community they're associated with. You'll also need to think about how to get consent from the community you choose. In ethnography, consent is very important. You'll find that the writing process for an ethnography is noticeably recursive rather than linear. For example, you might discover something late in the research process that alters the way you interpreted data earlier. In order to account for this, you're probably going to have to go back and interview someone again. So ethnography isn't a straight-through, step-by-step process. You're going to have to repeat steps, and we call this recursive. Furthermore, since you have to go on-site to take field notes and observe, you'll be discovering things that you wouldn't be able to experience by just reading about it. It's all firsthand. For example, you might notice how the space of a meeting room influences the way the meeting is conducted. You'll want to notice things like where people stand, who sits and who stands, and how people move about a space. Again, these are things that you can't really learn about just from reading a secondary source. You have to be on site to learn about it. You have to kind of be there to pick up the intricacies and the nuances of that specific community. And not only is ethnography a genre of writing itself, but there are also other genres involved, such as pre-writing, consent and drafting consent forms, writing field notes, writing interview notes and drafting interview questions, and even transcribing your interview, which will make it easier to analyze later on. You might keep a journal, a running monologue of your observations, and like all writing projects, you're going to engage in multiple drafts with this project. Kahn says that ethnography encourages experimental writing. You can play with conventions, which means that you can include things like images or photographs you took on site. If you write a paper, you can include headings. You can include things like graphs or graphics, maps you took of the space, appendixes with your field notes, etc. Or maybe you won't compose a print text at all. Maybe you'll relay your findings in a video or a Prezi, or maybe you'll even make a website. Ethnography really lends itself to a multimodal approach, which reinforces Kahn's point of it being experimental. But in addition to these writing practices and experimentation, an ethnography allows you to learn something about social interactions and communication among people. You should ask and hopefully answer the questions such as, how do identities operate in a group? How does language prohibit or assist communication? And how do these people deal with conflict when it arises? These are just some of the questions you can ask as you begin your ethnography.